Happy Thursday. It is Sharla Kornegay coming live to you with another Forever Friends Academy live episode. How are you guys doing? Happy almost weekend. Hopefully I'll get some of you guys on with me tonight. Let me introduce myself just in case there's someone new on tonight or catching the replay. Again, my name is Sharla Kornegay. I am a recording artist and author, creator of Interact Coaching, as well as Forever Friends Academy, where I do my group coaching, subscription-based membership, where we talk about all relationship topics and basically do what we do here, but dive in deep. Also get exercises from time to time and things like that. So if you like anything you hear tonight, but you'd like to either dive deeper and, be with a community also of other like-minded folks who are invested in developing the area of relationship skills, definitely go to if you're on Instagram, link in bio. If you're on any of the other platforms, it'll be in the description on the post, and you can check it out and see if you would like to join any. It is a tiered membership level, and each membership grants you a different amount of access. So definitely check it out. You can also, when you go to the website, I do it through buymeacoffee.com, and when you go to the site, you will hear different little snippets, from what we talk about. So definitely check it out. Hey, my Yopo Baya, my little sis just joined. How are you, darling? You didn't really miss anything. I was just talking about myself. Thanks. Always good to see you, love. So yeah, and if you want to check out my music, definitely go to your music platform of your favorite choice and, peruse the Sharla K catalog. Definitely, it's about to be Christmas season time. I'm sure there's probably people already listening to Christmas music, as I've heard those people who really, really love Christmas, they start listening in the summer. So if you're one of those people, check out my Snowflakes and Gumdrops Christmas album. I was super proud of it. We released it last year, and I was happy to release something, that what I love about Christmas is that, you can play it over and over again. It's like you make, for any artist, anyone out there, whether it's music or creating artworks, as far as if you're a painter or something, how much creativity and how much you put your passion in your art and what you create. And I think for me as a singer-songwriter, when I create an album, of course it's out there for anyone to listen to or play, but at least when you make a Christmas album, the idea and I guess the thought and the aim is that it will become a Christmas classic for people in their households. So I was very delighted to think that people would, continue to play the music at a certain point each time of the year. So hopefully that's what is happening in some of your households. And while I work on some new music for you guys, which I am, and I'm super, super excited. And I think if I can get it to you by the end of the year, it'll be very timely for, I think, the things that are going on in the world right now. So I'm excited about it. But enough about me. Let's get into tonight's topic. And of course, and I've been slacking on the scenarios. At least I feel like I have. Maybe I'm a little hard on myself. I really only missed like 2 Sundays, I should say, because that's when I usually give you guys a scenario. But I think these past 2 Sundays, I haven't had a scenario for you. I don't know, maybe I'm thinking of that wrong. But nonetheless, in my brain, I felt like I needed to put out another scenario for you guys. So I'm going to do a scenario tonight, even though clearly tonight's not Sunday. But of course, I have a quote at the top of the show for you guys to hear what your thoughts are. And I also have a question. So let's start with the top of the podcast quote. And I honestly don't know who to give credit to for this because when I saw it didn't have the person's name, and you guys know how I am. I like to give credit where credit is due. So, but I do know that the statement, at least as I have heard it in the past, I definitely have heard it derived from the Bible. So nonetheless, let me give you the quote. All right. So the quote says, surround yourself with those that will stand in the gap. That is the quote for tonight. Surround yourself with those that will stand in the gap. And again, I've heard the term stand in the gap, and I believe it is pulled from a biblical scripture from a prophet in the Old Testament, Ezekiel. So that's where I've heard it before, but never quite heard it articulated in a statement fully like that. Saw it, loved it, said I was going to present it to you guys tonight. So surround yourself with those that will stand in the gap is the quote for tonight. You guys know already. Do you think that's a truthful statement? Do you think it's something that is applicable to the development of relationships? So that's the quote. And the question that I'm going to try to layer into the scenario I have for you guys tonight is, in what way are you willing to stand in the gap for the people that you love? In what way are you willing to stand in the gap for the people that you love? And maybe some people might be listening to this and like, first time I ever heard of that, Sharla, stand in the gap. What do you mean? What do you mean, dear darling? Right? So let me give you a definition for it for those who might be, need a little bit more clarity to be able to answer the question. So I will give you just like a streamlined, base. I won't say generic, in general definition for you to kind of ponder on, to think about the quote as well as answer the question. So basically, to stand in the gap means to basically, I've heard it like this, expose yourself for the protection of something or someone, or come to your place yourself, I guess this is the best way I can example I can give you guys. Imagine if you were in a war, right? And people who have military background will relate to this a lot. But if you're in a war and you have your other, military, let's call them brothers and sisters with you, and one of them gets hurt, right? You would hold the position, because whatever position they're holding is, of course, defense, let's just say, for the country that they serve. And once that position is breached, of course, that's breached not only the fact that they got harmed, but now there's a weak point. So the next person stands in the gap for them, right? So to expose yourself for the protection of someone or something, I guess, that you believe in, or as well as to come to, fight for or against something for an individual. You can also look at it like that. So that is the quote. Surround yourself with those that will stand in the gap. That's the quote. And the question is, in what way are you willing to stand in the gap for the people that you love? Maybe if you're a married person right now and you're thinking about, well, in what way will you stand in the gap for your spouse? And maybe if you're not married, because I think that happens beforehand as well. In what way will you stand in the gap for your partner? What does that look like? And what triggered me to bring this topic to you guys is literally in this week. And I don't know, you guys let me know if anybody has seen this. And before I say the video that I saw this week that triggered this conversation with you guys, let me just state, because Maya's taking time out to write, and I want to give her statement to the rest of you guys who are on the other platforms. So it says, Maya said, I am going to share that with my kids, definitely applicable. Yeah, I definitely think so as well, for sure. Definitely in a familial type of relationship. Oh my gosh, absolutely. That definitely applies there, right? Love it, Maya, absolutely. So the video I saw this past week, which I am still just like flabbergasted, astounded. Like in all my generations of being here, I've never seen it before. And I honestly thought about, okay, maybe I'll play it for you guys. But then I was like, no, I'm gonna save it for my, my private group coaching. I'm gonna show it to them. And I was like, maybe I don't need to show it on the live, necessarily to get the point across. But anyway, the video that I saw, and let me know if any of you guys saw it. It was a video of President Trump, former President Trump. He was in a meeting with, I believe the group was called Latinos for Trump. right? And it was on like Forbes Breaking News YouTube channel, their website, and it was a very brief video. It was like maybe 3 minutes long, and he was there. I guess this was only a snippet of a long, I guess, conference of them asking different questions as they've been doing, right? Going out on at many different states with many different organizations doing a lot of, last minute interviews and having conversations about their policies. But at the end, basically, it was a woman. I don't know exactly the part that she plays in the organization, but she basically said that she called him a champion of faith. And then she said, I would like for the leaders that I have here with us to pray for you. And would you be okay with having us pray for you? Like literally lay hands, anybody grew up in the church, okay? If you're like me, the Pentecostal background or Baptist background, she was like, we want to lay hands on you and pray for your appointment of presidency. And so I was just like, because listen, like I said, I've never, ever seen it. And you guys anyone who has seen it, just because I've never seen it doesn't mean it hasn't happened. So let me know if you have seen that before, outside the context of a church. And I think that's what, I was like kind of floored with. And what was really powerful about it for me was that they prayed for him and they talked about one of the ministers that there was two ministers that did the prayer, and he said that basically that in the Bible God had appointed people, and we prayed for the kings that were appointed, and we want to pray for you and God's appointment for you to be the next president and for you to make America godly again. I was like, what? Wow. like wow, right? For so many reasons. One, because I've never seen it. I've never seen a president prayed for over where the people are standing in the gap for this, I don't know, I don't really want to call him candidate because he's former president, but right for his next presidency and for God's will to guide him through it. And not only that, but for God's anointing to come upon him. Right. And so in my mind, right, I don't know. Right. I don't clearly the people who are praying for him in my mind is for him. And they did say, we are praying for you to be the next president. And I was thinking, right, that how much of a representation of this occurring is a very good representation of people standing in the gap, right? And in my mind, right, it just in a general sense of when you think of people when you think of believers and you think of Christianity and things like that, you think of certain, right, behaviorisms, mannerisms, things. Well, we all who are believers know how hard it is to, challenging it could be sometimes to tame our tongue, to do certain things that are more Christ-like versus than maybe, what our emotions want to drive us to do. So in so many of those ways, I would think that maybe even some of those people who were praying, right, had to put aside a lot of the things that are, either they really do because of what they've seen, right? Some of President Trump's actions, or just the pumping of mainstream media, right? And maybe even how they're twisting and trying to make him into seem, like this awful person. With all of those things combined, the fact that they had to put those things aside, right? And still come here and do this prayer is like, because my question to you guys is, in what way are you willing to stand in the gap? for the people that you love, right? For your spouse, for your family members that are close to you. But really, right, as the example I'm giving you, and of course, I don't know any of this. Everyone in the room could be just like completely for him, you know, and regardless of whether they feel like past actions have lined up in that way. But nonetheless, the fact is that they're standing in the gap to someone who might not, right, so in the most ideal way, represent maybe their faith, you know? But I think that was one of the most just amazing things that I've seen this week. And so it triggered me to have this conversation with you guys because one of the ways that they were doing, and that we'll talk about tonight, to stand in the gap for someone who you love, or even, right, a lot of, especially for those who are believers, a lot of the standing gap is supposed to be for the people who you necessarily don't love. You might not be fond of their dealings and things like that, but maybe you respect and you honor the position and the authority that God has put in them in, right? And so therefore you want to call on heaven to make sure that they function in that in the right way. So it's a layered conversation, right? But I just wanted to give you guys some kind of context and background as to why I wanted to bring this topic up. So I need to take a moment and read because Maya, and I know her, well, I'm assuming that her wonderful fiance is with her, and they're probably typing and talking at the same time. So let me take a moment to read because they're taking out time to write. All right. So, okay. Yep, I was right. Kale there. Hey, Kale. He says, with the way you explained it, I stand in the gap for Maya, his beautiful fiance. Often I find myself being much more bold and proactive about making sure things are taken care of, tough conversations are had, and that she knows that she got at least one person fighting for her well-being. Oh my goodness. Amen. Hallelujah to that. Spiritual, emotional, and physical, right? Just in totality. That, let me read that again. You know how many people feel like they don't have one person to say that they can authentically say that this person really does care about me in totality. Like they just care about my well-being, right? Detached from who they are to me or what they expect to get from me. So I just love everything that he just stated. And yeah, let me read that again. He said, and that she knows that she got at least one person fighting for her well-being, spiritual and emotional and physical. In a less intimate sense, I stand in the gap for my students. Amen to that. Thank God for teachers. Oh my gosh, that's the reason why I substitute now when I can, y'all. For real. Because I know the people looking at me like, she don't look like she belong here, but that's why I do it, because teachers like him who are conscious enough to say, I'm going to stand in the gap, right, for these students. So thank you for your service. Literally, just like military, I thank God for teachers and their service and what they do. So I'm sorry, guys, I'm interrupting every statement he says, so I'm going to read it through without stopping. He said, in a less intimate sense, I stand in the gap for my students when they don't feel like trying, and I show them it's worth it and beneficial for them. All right. Maya says, my initial thought was that I'll stand in the gap to be, right, to the extent in which Holy Spirit empowers me to. Love means I'll go the distance. I'll ride till the saddle falls off. If Holy Spirit empowers me to do so. Beyond that is enabling, I feel like, and never inspiring. Oh, and never inspiring or honored. Yeah, for sure. She said also Jamal's Bryant Church did the same for Kamala at his church. Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it at church. I think it was because it wasn't a church setting, you know, and that they did it. I just never seen it in a setting where it wasn't a church and it was like legit just a conference. You know, you had all the people there, including the cameraman and all that, everybody stopped and did the prayer. So I've definitely seen it happen, or heard of it more so, because I can't say I retract that. I don't think I've seen it, but I've heard that it has happened when they're in, church settings or faith groups. So I think it was great, whether whatever your story is about him or not. And I appreciated that he kind of just took it in and stayed it there. And what I think it was interesting, and like I said, I don't, because in my mind, the teams, both of their teams, right? Whether it's Kamala, and like I said, I don't really usually talk about politics here, but it was just what triggered me wanting to have the conversation with you guys. But usually they have really brilliant people that are, vetting them and helping them with their talking points, and even, right, certain things that they do. And I think what was interesting that when I saw this prayer, right, was a week after, I don't know if any of you guys saw this, right, where Kamala was having, I forget what state she was in, but she was having a rally, and let me know if you guys saw it. It was like all over on certain, news channels, and she was talking about abortion. So I think there were like protesters who were pro-life, and they said Jesus is Lord. And let me know if y'all saw that, where she was like, "Oh no, you're at the wrong rally," right? And she was like, "You're at the wrong rally." And I assume she said that because she's talking about abortion, right? And they're there protesting, so they must have taken them out, right? And then, right, and then she kind of like was like, you belong in the rally, the smaller rally down, down the street. Of course, if you've seen the debate or anything, she was definitely alluding to Trump. But then the next week, right, I'm seeing this prayer that they're doing over Trump, and I was like, like, either way, I think it was powerful. But I can just imagine if I'm someone on his team, right, I would definitely have show the difference, the stark difference, if that was a strategy. Now, I don't know if that was the case. It could have just been a very authentic moment. And either way, I think it's powerful because that's what we need. We need prayer for our leaders. But I just thought about that because I was like, the timing, like the timing was just so, because of the timing, it definitely showed a stark difference in the way that they both responded. So, hey, Emily, she said, I feel like church and faith is a prop in this election for real. That's what I'm saying. I don't know. You know what I mean? But I mean, like I said, I had never seen it before. I would assume, though, if they go to churches that, you would have the leaders of the church pray over the next leader. But I think because of the setting, that's what it made it so shocking for me. But nonetheless, I just brought it up because that's what triggered the conversation. But yeah, Maya said, yeah, you're at the wrong rally, right? Yeah, it was insane. And I mean, I think she got a lot of flack from it because no matter what people think about the trending culture right now, I think America is still a very much, a believing country. So I think, yeah, I know if I was her PR person, or head, I would have definitely been like, we could have responded a lot differently. Because we don't want, you know what I mean? Just as far as tactically, but that's another conversation. No, Emily, it's not. But I do like. Emily was like, "Isn't that the jacket you wore in your music video?" No, but I do love leather jackets and the numerous variations of it. So. Yeah, absolutely, Maya, for sure. And that's what I said. I don't know, mainstream, it depends on where you get your news from. Mainstream media is only going to show you what they want to show you, especially if it depends too, right, which mainstream media, because there are definitely some that have complete bias, I feel, in my opinion, towards one candidate versus the other. So it depends on who you are listening to. But then you have some media stations that are kind of, kind of somewhere in the middle, and they'll expose it. And then you have people, who have their own channels. I guess that's in a good way, YouTube, where, things that maybe mainstream media will cut out and the public doesn't know, then you get to know, So a lot, like her saying that at the rally, I found out through some faith-based YouTube channels that were commenting on it. And I was like, whoa, I didn't expect for her to answer in that way, for sure. So for Emily and other people coming in, I know this conversation has went so many different. I'm so sorry, guys. Let me stay focused. What we are talking about tonight is standing in the gap for the people that you love. The quote that I put out at the top of the show is, surround yourself with those that will stand in the gap. All right, that is the quote for tonight. Surround yourself with those that will stand in the gap. And my question to those who were on earlier and still are on participating is, in what way will you stand in the gap for your married spouse, your partner, if you're in a long-term relationship, and even if you want to think about it in other contexts, like Nikhil brought up, teacher-student type of relationship. Maybe you can think of the ways that people have stood in the gap for you and to be able to answer that question. But I also bring it up, too, because for those of you who are on with me often, I always say a quote, you want to marry someone who is a worthy adversary of, right, the vices that wish to keep you imprisoned to where you can't really be authentically who you are. And I think in knowing who that person is or what that really means is that person will be willing to stand in the gap for you, right? So that looks different in many ways. It looks like what Nikhil said about Maya, that she knows that there's one person who authentically, is wanting to care about her well-being in all of the ways she exists. But I also love what he said, and I also love what he said about his teacher-to-student relationship, that sometimes when you're a student and you are not thinking that what you're doing is worth it or doing anything, that he'll stand in the gap for them too, right? So it's like when that person is either having a lack of belief or doubt or questioning certain things, he comes in to stand in the gap, until, to guide them, teach them until they become more aware and become strengthened. And right, things like this, people, it's hard nowadays, especially in the culture that we live in, because we know how it is or how it's been. I do feel like it's slowly pivoting, but I feel like it's a slow pivot, I think we're coming out of the era where it's just like the feel-good era. Like, just do what you feel. If it feels good to you, doesn't matter if it's based on fact or truth, it's just do it, and unfortunately, I think with that kind of belief system or mindset, then you are constantly kind of just thinking about what you're going to get out of it. When it comes to relationships, building relationships, it's just like, what is pleasing to you or pleasurable to you? It's not anything about, okay, I have to stand in the gap for someone. If someone, is hurt, I'm saying that I'm going to come in and, fill, the space or hold the weight until they're strong enough. Like, I don't think people, it's not a desirable thing, for people to think about. I think I missed a couple of things. Maya says, reminds me of a story about people on a bus saying, people on a bus saying, she said, something I said reminded her of this saying, which states, this bus on its way to hell. Oh, Lord. Maybe I should have I should have at a glance before I read it to you guys. But hey, listen, it is what it is. She said this bus is on its way to hell because it was a bumpy ride, and the Christians getting off the bus became because that's not their stop. Wow. I'm a fan. She said, oh my gosh, I love Maya. Yeah, I know. Because I think, you know, when I heard that, and I'm assuming you're still talking about Kamala's statement at her rally, I think, and I definitely haven't been in spaces and places where someone says something to you or a question is asked and you're uncertain or you wanted to maybe say it in a different way, differently. But I think this one's a little bit more intimate and tricky because I think when there are certain things that you're very convicted on that is so dear and true to you, then when someone says something to either highlight it or affirm it, you're not going to say something that is completely like, you know what I mean? Like totally against it. And so, unfortunately, I think in that moment, for many people, I think it made them question, like, okay, what what is going on? Because you can affirm that and then still, maybe continue to say whatever your point was, but to completely just kind of say it in the way that she did, I think it definitely was not a good response in many people's opinions. So, but yeah, let me know what your thoughts are. I am going to throw the scenario out for you guys tonight. And let me say it one more time because I see some new people popping in. Imagine Van Gogh, how are you? The quote for tonight was, and still is, surround yourself with those that will stand in the gap. And we are talking about standing in the gap when it comes to relationships tonight. So that is the quote. And my question to all that are on is, in what ways will you stand in the gap for people that you love? And now that we've talked about this a little bit more, we understand that standing in the gap is not only for people that you love, right? But there's ways to do it. And I love what oh my goodness, E, I didn't even see you in here. I'm so sorry, E. I don't even know if you're still in here, but thank you for popping in. And he's good. Ben is good. I would tell him you said hi. Sometimes I can't see. I apologize, guys. That's why I always try to look back because for some reason, sometimes I overlook or it doesn't come in right away, the comments. So I apologize about that. But, in what Maya was saying, as far as like, okay, I'll stand in the gap, but I'm not trying to do it in ways where if it's a person, and I'm assuming just in the way that she said it, if I see that the person's not receiving of it, or if I'm doing it and it's damaging to myself, then I have to reassess some of the ways that I can do that. So let's just talk about 3 before I give you guys this, the scenario, because I think what Maya brought up is pertinent and very important, and I don't want someone walking away thinking that I'm saying stand in the gap for people at the expense of your own soul, peace of mind, and sanity. I think number 1, like I said, this phrase, I don't know who to give kudos to for the whole quote in the way that it's articulated, but the quote does come from, it has biblical scripture background. And so I think it's important in that context to kind of understand it a little bit better. In scripture, biblically, when it talks about standing in the gap, it was a saying and words that the prophet Ezekiel was hearing from God. And he was saying he was looking for someone to stand in the gap, but that no one could be found. So if you're thinking about it, and sometimes the Old Testament prophets is not sometimes popular books that people read. So I will use some popular, I think, at least in my sense or my mind the stories that people might have heard. It is synonymous or can be used like Moses standing in the gap for the children of Israel, right? He could be raised up to kind of guide and help and be used to guide them into freedom, right? Or what's another example? Abraham and the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah was like they were in a state of just like complete just rebellion from God. And Abraham had his family member there, Lot. And so he stood in the gap. He asked in prayer that, pray, God, please don't, destroy them. If you will you not destroy the city if there's one, godly person there? And so in that way, he stood in the gap. And that brings me to, because I said I was going to give you guys 3 ways that you can stand in the gap, right? For your partner, for your spouse, for the people that you love. And I think if you walk away with anything, listening to tonight's live chat, is that one, especially if you are looking to be in a relationship for the long term to like where it's turning into marriage, there will be moments where you will have to stand in the gap for your partner, right? That's a period, point blank, because one, we're not made perfect, and seasons come, seasons go, right? And relationships ebb and flow. And so understanding that and looking at the person that you're potentially thinking about becoming your wife or your husband, you want to, as I always say to my clients or people listening to me, before you so beautifully and eloquently tell that person you love them, think about, can I serve you for a lifetime? Because that is what you're signing up for, right? So 3 ways you can stand in the gap. And of course, we can talk about so many more, but let's just talk about the 3 ones that are really, really powerful. One, we've already kind of talked about when I was talking about the people praying for Trump and things like that, is prayer, right? Intercessory, right? That type of praying for someone who you love. You can pray for someone who you can love from afar, right? You can intercede and pray, and that won't be so taxing on you, right? Just going back to what Maya said, because I think it's important, right? You don't want to stand into the gap to the point that you are now drained and it is damaging your soul, your sanity, your peace, right? So prayer is one way you can stand in the gap for your partner, and also someone who you know because of how they are and the way that you guys cannot harmonize, that you need to pray for them from afar, right? And that won't tax you. So that's one. 2 is, of course, serve. That's why I say you want to ask, can I serve you, for a lifetime, this person who you're with? Service, right, in many different ways. Nikhil brilliantly, eloquently, in my opinion, stated all of the ways, not all of them, some of the ways, because I'm sure he serves in so many different greater capacities as well, of how he protects his wife to be, and nurtures her. And her development is to let her know that I care and I'll nurture your well-being, your spirit, your emotion. And that can come up in many different ways, right? That can come up with me, in intimate ways, whether it's me hugging you, loving on you in different ways, but it also can come up on me having the hard conversations with you that I know that is, for the betterment of your growth, and knowing that I can have it with you and give you this truth and layer it with love and know that you can feel that with love and receive it, and then, improve upon whatever needs to be improved upon and grow, right? So service, that's another way that you can stand in the gap for your partner. And third one, which I think is really great, is difficult for many of us. I can definitely say it was a difficult walk for me, and at times can still be challenging, right? Which is to be vulnerable. It goes back to the definition I gave you guys in the beginning, just so that people could have like an understanding of what standing in the gap means. One of them that I gave was to expose oneself for the protection of something, right? To expose oneself for the protection of something or someone, right? And I love this because that's what vulnerability is, right? Is an exposing of yourself to get to the authentic you, right? We had, I don't know how many shows ago, but we were talking about the unbecoming, right? Life is about unbecoming and kind of stripping yourself of the conditioning that you may have taken on, and to get to who the real you are. And I think one of the greatest gifts that we can have here in the process of developing relationships with people who we hold dear and near to us is that we can expose ourselves fully to that person or those people in our lives with no judgment, you know, and and be okay. Because no matter what it is that we're exposing, they always let us know or reaffirm that I really see. No matter what you just told me or what you went through or what you're going through currently, I see who you truly are, in the light of love, in the light of God. So those are three ways that we can stand in the gap for our partners. Out of many, of course, there are many others, but those are some of the ways. Just in case you guys were thinking of some or questioning, like I'm wondering how can I. But definitely wanted to kind of double back and talk about that because I thought what Maya brought up was good, and I don't want people to definitely leave this conversation saying, Charlotte said, stand in the gap. I don't. I'm when I'm introducing, these principles, they're never void of taking the necessary time and moment to measure your capacity to do it, and or measuring your openness and willingness, even if you feel like I haven't arrived at the capacity yet, that I can still be open and willing, though, that, okay, I can I can call on heaven or I can call on God to help facilitate this. I'm willing to come forward to stand in the gap. And I think that's really what the core message is, just taking it from where it comes from biblically. That's what it means. It means like God's looking down, he's looking at to see if I can find someone who will stand in the gap, stand for truth. Like if the culture is going this way, will this person say, you know what? No. I know this and that one is saying this, but this is what, reigns supreme, or this is what God's truth is. And I think it's important because, in again, as I said, in relationships, we go through so many different seasons, and man, life's as we all know, and challenges occur, and we can choose to either face those challenges, and rise to the occasion, or retreat, depending on where we are. But in those times when we are going through that, there might be times where your partner is at a weak moment, and needs strength. And those are in those times is where we stand in the gap, for them. And I think it's important because sometimes we can get into a mind state where it's like, well, no, like I didn't sign up for this. I want you to consistently be this. And you're not being consistently this. So, I'm not really feeling like standing the gap for, for you in that. So standing in the gap, right? What comes along with that is grace, is mercy, is forgiveness. And those things are not always so easy to do, especially when we have to be the ones to pour out and extend it. Now, let me tell you, on the other end, somebody giving us the grace and mercy and forgiveness, and I guess depending on who you are, some people it's hard for them to receive, love or service when other people are giving it to them because they're used to being the server. So I can understand that. But most of the times, most of us, can be like, okay, yeah, give me the forgiveness, give me the grace, give me the mercy. But when you have to be the one, oh man, not always easy to do. So yeah, so definitely continue to marinate. Let me say hi to those people coming in. Oh my goodness, MF Stars, how are you, sir? Don't know if you're still in here. Thank you for popping in. Daydreaming Media, always like to see you guys. Summer Rain, don't know if you're still in here. You're not a usual, but I don't know if you've been here before, but if you haven't, welcome, welcome. And if you are a returner, welcome back. But thank you guys for coming in. We are talking about standing the gap for the people that you love. And the question that I have asked people tonight is, in what way are you willing to stand in the gap for the people that you love? What does that look like? Maybe you can think about how people have stood in the gap for you in the past. When I immediately, definitely gonna think about my husband all day, every day. He does it in the ways that Nikhil laid it out. Because the quote was like, surround yourself with those that will stand in the gap. Thank God. I definitely have him for sure. My children for sure, especially my oldest daughter. That is like, she like, don't talk about my mama. Like she is definitely my girl. So she will definitely stand in the gap for me. So I have some people, and I have some close friends, like people who, matter of fact, Maya is one of them. But I have a couple of people who I met that were actually clients of mine, or maybe still is, and we just developed really, really close friendships, and they will stand in the gap for me in a heartbeat. So I'm grateful, that I have people that definitely I could say I have in my life and in my corner that will stand in the gap for me. But outside of those current people, I definitely thought about my grandmother, a very strong Jamaican, strong strong, determined grandmother who definitely, thank God, she stood in the gap for me, because when my father passed away when I was little and my mom couldn't really raise us, that's who took us in, So I thank God for her. She definitely stood in the gap for me. There are definitely a lot of teachers, especially the male teachers. I remember a lot of my male teachers because I so desired to have male presence in my life that I could learn and observe from. And so for me, going to school afforded that for me. And thank God, I prayed, put a prayer out there that God, I'll learn. Just set, whoever you send my way. But thank God he sent angels, people, men of bright character, who anchored themselves in him, and that afforded me greatly. I learned so much, to where it helped me in the future for when I had to, navigate my relationship with Ben as we developed our friendship, and then, into marriage. So I'm very grateful for them. So there are a lot of people, the list, thankfully, is a good list for me of people that I can definitely say have stood in the gap for me. And I think I'm grateful for what I get the opportunity to do to help coach people on relationship skills and things like that, to where I am able to pass it on, where I felt the gratitude of people standing in the gap for me in the positions that they held. I get to stand in the gap for those couples who are trying to transform their life. Either it's in prevention is better than cure, and they're trying to learn the principles ahead of time so that they don't, follow the same failure paths that were before them, or it's a couple that, yeah, man, yeah, we're in the ditch right now, and we need to get out. So I get to stand in the gap for them as they, gain their strength and transition and transform their relationships. So I'm really grateful for that I get to use my voice to do that, whether it's coaching or singing or providing music and song that can have inspiration and motivation for people. So yeah, so that's my thoughts on the quote. Ways that you can stand in the gap, as well as my just giving people flowers who stood in the gap for me. So I'm going to put it in a short scenario, and I'm gonna get you guys off because it's already 9:14, and I don't want to keep you guys much longer. So the scenario that I wanted to give you guys, just to hear your thoughts on it, that's in tandem with the kind of theme of standing in the gap, is we have, let's say, I was trying to figure out whether I wanted to make them married or make them just a couple. I think I'm just gonna make them a couple. All right, so we have a couple, they work together. All right, they work together in, let's say, corporate construction company, right? And so they deal with the development of, real estate, apartments, buildings, things like that, right? They work together, but they do work in different departments, right? So they have been teamed up along with two other people on their team to oversee, right, this project development of apartments that are mainly dedicated to middle class income earning families. Because if anybody knows the way it is right now, okay? With trying to find a place to live, it just seems like the things are like, the amounts that you have to pay is astronomical, right? And it seems like the gap in between middle income to just like, people who are just, very wealthy, or people who are more under the income level. It feels like that middle is just like thinning, right? So anyway, let's say they're over that type of project development. So they're working on it. They have to meet deadlines and things like that. Unfortunately, they don't meet, let's say, like two deadlines that now is going to cost the corporation that they work for, lots of money, which we all know. Anybody who works for corporate America, that is not a good thing, right? That's a no-no. You need to make us money, right? And or definitely save us money, but definitely don't cost us. So the wife is, even though they're working together, she was the head. She was the one that they put spearheading this development. And so they're having a meeting to go over some of the unfortunate mishaps and mistakes, and that's explaining that it's going to cause the delay. So let's say the CEO or of that department and things like that is basically not happy, just giving it to her, right? He's just giving it to her during the meeting. And in the way that he's giving it to her, he's a little demeaning, because he's upset about the cost, and the delay that's going on. And so she, tries to explain herself, but she's kind of sitting in the fire. And all along, no one, the two other people that are working on the team, including the person that she is having intimate personal relationship with, growing and developing and things like that, he says nothing. And he basically, in her perspective, just allows it all to fall on her, right? And so at the end of the meeting, the I guess the consequence of it is that she's going to be, removed from being the spearheading the project, and now he is going to be put as the head, and that's the end of it. So at the end of that happening, they have a conversation, and she explains to him that I feel, very disappointed, because I get that I was spearheading this, but we were all working together, and I feel like, in the way that he was talking to me was kind of demeaning, and you just kind of sat there and did nothing. You didn't say anything. Not to say that you had to overtly kind of come to my defense or anything like that, but even if you offered a little bit of like, you know, certain facts or things that went on within the project to give some kind of support or backing, or even maybe even fought to keep me on, you said nothing, you know. And what she says to him was like, I have to be honest with you, like I don't know if I want to keep, you know, developing the relationship with you, because I want people, I want to be surrounded by those who can stand in the gap with me. She says it to him, right? During the scenario. And I don't feel like you did that at all. And so I don't know if I can like continue this with you and feel like I would be supported, going through both the highs and the lows, you know, or rough times and things like that. And so he says, oh, well, you know, I understand, you know, what you're saying, but did you seem like you were handling yourself well. I don't think that I needed to, you know, come to your defense in that way. You're very much qualified for the position that you hold and things like that, and your work speaks for itself and things like that. And I don't think that it was my place to do that. But that doesn't mean that in the personal sense, you know, in our personally growing our relationship, that I wouldn't be there for you through anything or through it all. I think you're putting me in a hard, you know, predicament or situation to say that I should act in a certain way in this professional area, and then also just automatically assuming that's how I'm going to be when we are in our personal development of our relationship, right? So that's the scenario in a nutshell. What do you guys think? If you guys are still on with me, hopefully you are. What do you guys think? You know, she doesn't feel like he was there to kind of like stand in the gap for her. He just feels like he just kind of just let her take all the heat. And not that he had to completely like defend her, but present even certain facts within how they, you know, or maybe all the things that they did do well, or present something to kind of, you know, support and maybe lessen the CEO's kind of response to, right, the consequences of the mishap that basically the whole team did. Or do you agree with the, you know, do you think that she is right in assessing that if you can't do that in this area, in this professional area, that most likely it is going to translate to our personal relationship? And I don't want to be with, I want to surround myself with people who will be willing to stand in the gap for me. Or do you agree with the gentleman? Do you think that he is right? Like, no, this is our profession, and I don't, you know, you're highly qualified. You didn't need me to get this job, you know. I won't say he said that to her. But that's his thinking. You didn't need me to get the job. You're highly qualified. You are more than qualified to present your argument, state your position, especially against, you know, someone who is the head of our division. And I don't think it was my place to do that. However, our personal development, our personal relationship, I am there 100%. I would definitely be willing to stand in the gap in that way. And I'm here, definitely willing to have our space here to talk about it. And you let me know whatever you need with whatever's going on and whatever transition will happen. However this will affect you, I'm here for you. That's only one way, in the way that you're saying, for me to present, or I don't know, say something in the midst of the, you know, engagement that you guys were having, was only one way. I can stand in the gap in so many different ways. So let me know, if y'all are still on with me, what you think about that scenario. Who do you agree with? The woman in the scenario or the man? Do you think like, yeah, she should definitely pump the brakes? And if he couldn't stand up for her, in that moment, or however that would look, intercede, let, support, put some supporting facts of how good she was on it, however it would come about. Do you think she's right in that way? That, no, I don't think if you can't do it here, then most likely you probably won't do it in the other area either. So I'm just going to pump the brakes. Or do you agree with the man? Like, there's more than one way. I can stand in the gap for you. And just because I didn't intercede in that moment, because I don't think that it was necessary or the place and time, that doesn't mean that I won't do it in another area. So let me know. Let me know what your thoughts are. I know our conversation in the beginning, talking about so many other things, kind of made it a little late for me to put out the scenario for you guys. So hopefully I got some folks still on me, and you guys will let me know what your thoughts. If not, what I'll do is that when I come back on, God willing, on Sunday, the next time, I'll pose the scenario when I have a whole bunch of folks coming in at the top of the hour and get your thoughts on it. But I'll give it a moment just in case, right? People could be typing. And they can be on here with me, and maybe I just, gotta wait a minute. So we'll see what you guys' thoughts on this scenario is. I'm just making sure I didn't miss any comments because, boy, oh boy, can I? I don't think so. Okay. I think I looked thoroughly through all of them. Just want to make sure I'm not missing anyone. Taking out the time to type. But while I'm waiting to see if any of you guys are typing on your answer, I think definitely I really do appreciate the conversation that we had so far, especially with those, coming on earlier, to taking out the time to type and let me know what your thoughts are. I think it's a good, definitely a pertinent and topic we need to talk about more. Because like I said, I think we're coming out of the stage of where everything is kind of like, okay, what are you going to do for me? These are my expectations. It's all about, the season of selfishness. I really do think that's kind of what I feel like was ushered in the whole culture of like, do what you feel. It doesn't matter whether it's truthful or fact. That's kind of what it brought in, where people were just kind of anchored in their own selfishness. And I'm happy to kind of seeing it pivoting a little bit more now to where, I think the reasoning of people, and I think at the end of the day, and you guys can let me know, those who are still listening, still on, is that I think the most meaningfulness that you get out of life is when you live for something bigger than yourself. For many of people that are believers, that is, right? Believing in Christ or believing in God. For others, maybe it might be their family, or, maybe it be a greater vision that they have. But I think life can can feel like you're navigating drudgery, through the heaviness of it all. I think, and mind you, there's a lot of levity in life, but I do think that the levity comes from anchoring yourself in something that's greater than you, because if not, then the moments do feel very fleeting, So I think that's why this conversation is important, because in order for you to stand in the gap for someone or something, you have to be anchored in. You have to think of something that is higher than yourself. You have to kind of be fueled by making the impact that is beyond yourself. And so how do you get there if culture and society is putting out that, no, it's what your expectations are. Are they mean your expectations? What is just I, and kind of highlighting, effectual or continual selfishness as something that is going to bring the most pleasure and enjoyment in your life when it's not really true. It runs out of gas fast. That's what I'll say. That type of life runs out of gas really, really fast. And then when you run out of gas, it's either it runs out of gas fast or it crashes, and burns. Honestly. But if you're living a life where the things that you're doing, it's greater, it's greater, it's beyond yourself. You want to serve something beyond yourself, then you get a lot of lasting meaningfulness out of life. And you make such a great impact that who you are, your existence, and the remembrance of you gets etched in time to where people are echoing, how you served and the things that you did way beyond, way after, right? You transcend, and you leave your physical earthly body, leaves this place. And that's what, that I guess standing that is what is required, when you are thinking about, standing in the gap for your spouse, for the people that you love, for the people that you don't love, but because you know the truth, and because of that, you still do what you know is right, even in the midst of darkness and chaos and things like that. So I absolutely love the conversation with you guys tonight. I don't think I have an answer yet for my scenario, which I kind of like. I'm not used to, but I kind of like it. And I think I'm going to leave it as kind of like a cliffhanger. So if you're listening to the replay, definitely flood my feed and let me know what your thoughts are on the scenario I gave. I will when I come back on, which is perfectly fine for me. Because it's like, I feel like I'm a good student right now. I feel like I'm ahead of the game. I'm ahead of time because Sunday is when I'm supposed to come back on, and that's when I usually am supposed to give you guys a scenario. So, you know what? Being able to kind of carry it over, I'll do that tonight. So I have to come up with another one when I come, talk to you guys on Sunday. So I'm going to leave it with the scenario, and it'll be the cliffhanger for tonight. And I'll start with it at the top of the show on Sunday, and then you guys can let me know your thoughts on it. All right, but hopefully you heard something that resonated with you tonight. Hopefully, I guess more importantly than it just resonating with you, you were able to extract some kind of principle that you can apply to your relationships, not just intimate relationships like marriages, but from family relationships. Like I said, though, the first person I thought of was my grandmother when we were talking about standing in the gap, because it's so necessary. It is so necessary in familial relationships and dynamics to have people who will be willing to stand in the gap, because we talk about it all the time here. It's not just because someone has a title, or chose to bring you into this world and you become a part of this family. It doesn't mean that those people are, unfortunately, right? It doesn't mean that they're going to support or be there for you in the way, right? I guess ideally we would say a mother, a father, a auntie, uncle, etc. would be there. But when you have people who are either biological family who can now stand in the gap and play, right? Their position, because they can't be your mom or your father or whoever they're standing in the gap for. They come into your life and they be who they are, and then they show up in your life and they display and reflect God's light and love there. And it does it nourishes you, right? To be able to then, of course, do whatever necessary growth and healing you need to do for yourself, because of whatever things that occurred. But I'm always grateful, and I always like to highlight that no matter, even if those people that you expected to be in your life in a certain way because they held a certain title, if they couldn't show up because of their own story, of their own backstory of how they responded to their experiences in life. And they did not have the capacity to show up. That I am a firm believer. I know I've experienced it. God always sends angels. He always does. And as long as you can kind of relinquish the title and understand that it's okay, as long as those angels come in your life and reflect God's love, it's coming from the source God anyway. So then you just embrace it, and it will do what it's supposed to do. So I think it's an important conversation. I'm glad that I was able to have it with you guys tonight. And hopefully you can walk away thinking, and maybe even having, hopefully, I always like to encourage having a conversation. If you're married with your spouse, if even in a family dynamic or even in friendships, right? Where you can ask, your loved ones, in what way are you willing to stand in the gap for the people that you love? Or if you want to ask it towards them because you're in their life, in what way do you feel that I do that for you? Do you feel like I have done that before, where I stand in the gap? Because, it's nice to know. It's nice to know. And I think there are people who do that and might not know how much the people that they're doing it towards cherish and honor them for doing it, because we just don't talk about it. So hopefully it ignites a conversation, between you and your people. And more importantly, well, I would say more importantly, also importantly, then you can reflect on that quote, surround yourself with those that will stand in the gap. And I think we all, every relationship dynamic has to be tested, and every relationship dynamic should be assessed, on how we are currently functioning with one another. And you definitely want people who can stand in the gap. As I introduced it in the beginning, it comes from a biblical scripture where God is asking for people who can he look out into the world that would be willing to stand in the gap and stand on God's principles and truth. So I think in the same way, right? I think when we talk about our marriages and friendships and things like that, we also want to, know that the circle that we have is also built, and equipped with people who would be willing to do that for us. So, yeah. So, good conversation, guys. We're going to let the scenario be a little what is it called? Cliffhanger. Let it be a cliffhanger to like a movie tonight until Sunday. And then I'll bring it up to you guys, and you guys let me know what your thoughts are. All right. As always, definitely if you liked anything you heard, click on that link in the bio if you're on IG to, inquire about if you want to dive in deeper, something more specific to you and what you're going through. I do individual coaching for couples, familial, like if you need to kind of hash out things within family. So all of that, look on, my website. If you want to do more group coaching, and where we dive into relationship concepts a little bit deeper than we do here, definitely check out my, my academy, Forever Friends Academy. Links in the description on every other platform that I'm on right now. And so just check it out. Listen to the snippets that we have. And until next time, as I always like to say, always remember to live, to love freely. All right. Good night, folks. Have a good night. Bye.